pitch was a bit controversial that I sent in. It's called the Zen of Agile. I'm not a Buddhist, actually, but I need to have a catchy title, so I came up with that one. First, about me, maybe. My name is Danilo. I came to share my public outrage. I am a head quality assurance at Sidenis in Zurich. I also have a master in computer science, but that was in the old millennium. Maybe that's not valid anymore. I also am a hater of bullet points, so we won't have any. And I'm also a certified Scrum Master, but that expired. So maybe that's also a topic that we will raise during the speech. And in this context, at Swiss Re, I act as a Scrum Master in a casualty R&D. So, but enough about me. First, maybe nomenclature. Agility is about dogs running around obstacles for a badge. Now, it's funny that this morning we were talking about dogs already. But this is the reason why, especially Brits, when we have some, we say the Agile, das Agile, and not the agility, because it's a different thing. I mean, it could be that your office looks like this, and that working in your project feels like this, but it's nothing to do with the topic, actually. So I actually took quite a long time to gather information on what actually makes me angry in the Agile world, and I had a hard time to find, a train of thought through all the topics. So I decided to start with some mood pieces, snapshots from the real world that I saw, and this is one of them. I don't know if you know Cutepit. It's a matchmaking app. They have a matchmaking questionnaire. This is one of these questions. Should engineers be required to take humanities classes? I find it quite hurtful, actually, that this even comes as a question, but this somehow appears to be reflecting what people think about IT people or engineers in general. Here's another one. I don't know if you know Dave Snowden. It's not the other guy, not Edward. It's the one from the Kinefin network. So programmers are unable to speak to ordinary mortals. This is also very hurtful. Given that software is eating the world, like we know, and I'm not living in 1960. I don't work in the basement as an administrator. Well, of course we have those, but that's not a reason. Here, this is also a situation from a project. I cannot quote the people here because they're not of public interest. So the engineer says, we need to stop the rushing, right? We need to start doing things properly and test thoroughly. And the manager, on the other hand, saying, well, that's not agile. Because in this ever-changing world, you need to respond all the time and quickly. So apparently there's no time for testing and stuff. Now, I don't know which one you trust to be more agile. I find the lower one to be very unprofessional. Anyway, so it's maybe a bit about perception. At least I can make an example. Well, this is fictional. The engineer hitting the agile topic for the first time, he thinks, well, cool. Now I don't have to document anymore. And I can work for 2 weeks, and then I don't have to talk to anybody. They leave in peace. Well, that's maybe a bit one-sided. But on the other hand, the manager, when he first sees Agile, he thinks, cool, now I get the people available all the time. And I don't have to pay for them, or for it. And this really happened. I just lately saw a company where people wanted to own the software as good Scrum practitioners, and they really had their phone on during weekends and nights. I mean, you can do that, but you need more people than just a Scrum team to work in shifts. And then, third, but last but not least, I tried to draw a hipster, so I'm new at sketching. And you're nobody in Agile if you don't sketch notes, right? So it came out to be a Dr. Evil or so. Anyway, the consultant now finds it cool because he's now coming from the IT and can make much money with IT without not knowing anything about programming. Now, the question is, how did the cat get so fat? One of the origins of this problem lies way back, and I call it, well, it's not actually my expression, the new ignorance. So the new ignorance is an expression from the 80s, actually. So my philosophy teacher told me that. It's the fact that you can pretend any load of BS that you want. You will find somebody in the world that has the same opinion or even has written a white paper about it, so it must be true. So anything can be true, and this, of course, gets multiplied in the modern age since you have non-sequential, non-binary infotainment, where you have the proof at hand of a click of a button. Now, let's try and see what people think is Agile. When they hit the word the first time, I'll try to give some hints. First, probably that you will hear Scrum. I'm not going to say Scrum is not Agile. I've been trying to sell Scrum for 16 years now. But if you don't do it right, I mean, if you only use the words and not think in the Scrum way and don't do your proper testing and everything, then the Scrum will not lead you anywhere. Of course, before Scrum there was XP. XP is also about testing, actually. Or if you don't do Scrum, you do Kanban. And of course, DevOps. I'm not going to talk about DevOps. There are very many people today that did that already. And TDD, I have a separate slide deck. Now, let's make a short break here. I actually think there is very much Agile in this, if you do it right. But of course, it gets worse. Scaling. Now, I'm not going to bash Safe today. I have a separate slide deck for that too. But it beats a fatalistic warning, right? If you read it out loud, and I actually can't believe that not anybody else has noticed already. Anyway, yeah, so there is a problem with scaling, because I think actually Scrum is already something scaled, right? It's not just one programmer, it's 7. And if you try and scale it further, you will get into trouble with complexity. But enough about that. It gets worse. Psychologists come into place and German teachers and starting saying that it's all about communication, team building, project structures and stuff, and not at all about producing software. And there's so many of them. Teal, spiral dynamics, 9 levels, working out loud, lean, new work, systems thinking, design thinking, future of work, learning organizations, beta codecs, and this is ridiculous. I mean, and it's BS, right? Because if you don't start doing things right, then multiply stuff, I mean, of course, there's very much value in these things. I'm actually part of the communities, practically all of those. I went through Switzerland to all meetups to be able to talk about it. And of course, when people are happy because they're doing, working out loud, they might be better programmers because they're happy. But a happy lawyer will not do your IT business. So, yeah, the first thing first, right? What you really need, and this is how, as the Derby puts it, you need people, right? You need good people, craftspersons that have the means and the willingness to produce, and by means, I don't mean IntelliJ or Visual Studio Code. It's education, right, and brains. and practice. So actually, she said it differently. It was craftsmen. Can't believe I'm less non-gender conforming than Mrs. Agile. Anyway, and on the other hand, we also have the manifesto, right? The Agile Manifesto, somewhere between 0.8 sustainability, yada yada, and simplicity, yada yada, that's 0.9, saying continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enables Agile. Now what that means is you really need to gather the people first, people that have education and that lasted a bit longer than 2 days Scrum training. And probably this also means your Scrum Master needs to be a programmer and not a Agile consultant. Okay, then. Oh, right, and what you don't need is stupid rules. As in user stories, if you try to put creativity in such templates, you will just not get anywhere. I mean, this is for children. Actually, no, children would rebel and not do that. Same counts for acceptance criteria. Even robots nowadays are more intelligent than having to parse pseudocode to check on stuff. Don't push people into thinking prisons. Okay, so we need good people. What else? And of course, since I'm coming from quality, it's quality. But here again, if you don't do it right, and there's very many approaches that don't lead anywhere, that's not gonna work out. So who has never seen a testing pyramid? Because it's a trying, right? No. So I hear that all the time. That's why I turned it into a pyramid. So the idea would be, like actually the former talk already explained, that if you find the defects, the sooner they find, the less costly they are. But that's not the only thing, right? Unit testing has much more of value than just checking for defects, right? It's an emergent design in there. It's more than just testing first. It's actually a design principle. And if you put it in 3D, it actually takes more volume than if it was just a triangle. And whereas these rather stupid automated things, they don't find any defects. Normally, you automate things that you have found, or, I don't know, a use case, and it breaks before it ever finds anything. And you have to rewrite the test, but a bug you never find. It's like when you break your arm. It never breaks at the same place again. Sorry. Okay, and on top of that, and I try to make the volume of the cloud a bit the same size. Exploratory testing, on the other hand, is a reflected thing. There's intelligence in it. People that work with exploratory testing, they are very creative. And there is nothing to automate there. I mean, you can, of course, when you find trouble, try and automate these things. In some cases, it might be also a good idea. But normally, the good thing is the happening. You can also do it, I don't know, in your big room meetings, in your PIPs. It's always fun. It's also things that you know, people don't get bored, as with one-way speeches like this. Yes, so, but in many cases, the unit testing is left out. Actually, the testing per se as a programmer is not valued. So people are rewriting software sometimes and do not start from scratch with the right principles, turning out with something like this, where you have few UI, a bit more service tests automated, and some of them go and break through and measure even coverage maybe. But this is not a testing pyramid. This is a testing Schmerbiolog. If you haven't seen the series, Gravity Falls, I would advise you to watch it. Anyway, if this is your project, you're not agile. It starts with testing. Okay. So you need good people, good testing. Oh, I wanted to correct that. Good quality. What else? Well, from my point of view, actually not much more, right? This is a sense-making slide. Maybe we need to stay here a bit longer. So if you have the right people, educated, trained, smart people, and they can accept or actually identify themselves with the values of your organization. So that's the hard part, right? And you cannot make them. Very many people say you need to train mindset. You cannot train a mindset. I mean, you can favor it, but if you start trying changing people's minds, that's what religious cults do, not IT projects. And they're also not successful at that. Sorry. And on top of that, you have the quality. So you have good teams, and they are actually living quality principles. Your principles of the organization, if they integrate the quality, that's another step, actually. But then what else do you need more? Because on top of that, if you say that you also need methods, like Scrum, in the operation, and your organization actually also wants to have some kind of process, it might very well be that if the solid ground is good, that the methods just relate to practices. Could be just a mapping, or maybe you don't have to do anything. Because people that think that way don't need advice. At least not in that direction. Okay. Dove siamo? Right. Now, I promised in the pitch that I would talk about age, and I must admit I have found nothing in the internet or anywhere else that actually proves that age would be a problem for being agile, but also not the contrary, actually. So it's not in favor or against. What I think is the problem is resistance to change. Why would people not accept new methodology? Well, so if we try and put it in a diagram, so imagine 50-year-old guy, well-educated, new people come in, 25 years old. This is not an age problem, right? This is fear. So you actually are afraid that your wonderful experiences was nothing because it's not usable in the new context. I would even go further and abstract it to this dimension, I don't understand it. But this is not necessarily a factor of age. I know very many people that are young and don't understand, and vice versa. So on the other axis, there's this other problem. You always have the dilemma to use new technology, innovative technology, or staying with old technology. Maybe you have legacy software, you have rewritten it already 5 years ago, and then somebody comes and says you need to change everything again to be bleeding edge. So this is actually also what I call the space travel dilemma. So the example would be that you build a rocket now and start it to go to populate Alpha Centauri, and on the other hand, the other guy waits until there is lighter material, more energy efficient fuel and everything, and that rocket actually would overtake yours. So waiting would have been better. But more in general, it's a problem of I don't trust it or I don't like it. And then there's a third dimension, and that's rivalry. So if you don't like your teammates or whatever, somebody that gave you an order, it might very well be that the resistance comes from a lacking of sympathy. So this triangle then turns out to be, I don't like you, I don't like it, I don't understand it. It's not easy to cope with this, but I'm pretty sure not about age. And the problem is, the further away you are, and I'm sure there are more than just 3 dimensions here, but I'm very bad at drawing multi-dimensional hypercubes on a slide. You will have this disruption, this contradiction, and all that helps here is doing more team events. I mean, if people really don't like each other, then you will find out there too, and you can maybe make 2 teams of that situation. And the other problems, they would solve themselves, right? If you let the people work together on stuff. So not doing anything alone is always a good advice. Okay. Then, so this is actually the reason why I started writing down things. I know is short for Agile in name only. Now, how do we recognize if something is only named Agile but it's not? Actually, it's a waterfall in the purest sense. Now, I have put up a Agile board for this. And normally, what people actually already understand, and since we have so much DevOps today, I will say it. It's not that every team in the world has delivery every seconds or feature-wise, but it's in the notion of the people, right? If you don't have proper CI/CD, you're probably not Agile, or if you don't try to get there, you're not Agile. So that's I think the people already know. What's also a bit in there is documentation. And I don't mean commenting your code, get name, gets the name, returns name. That is senseless. I mean, of course, the evidence that puts the why in there. Why are you doing things? And although, of course, not everybody does it again, I think it's in the minds of people. If you don't have anything that explains why you're doing things, it's a bit hard. Not still in the doing is this teamwork thing. I believe people actually believe it. So if I say it's better to work in a team, they say, yeah, I think it's true. But then again, they don't do it. And start saying things like, pair programming costs at least 10% more, which is, there's no evidence for that, right? I mean, and it's not true. I can actually prove it logically, and then you don't need evidence. And quality metrics, although I must say the ones that I know from projects, just putting in place Sonar without configuration is maybe not such a good idea, but at least people know that they could do it, and that they normally also strive for having it. Now, what people have not started fighting is buzzwords. If a salesman comes to me and wants to tell me why I have to be agile, I should mistrust all the buzzwords. So I don't trust anybody that says mindset or personal growth or agile for that matter. There are very many of those. And the more they just use these anti-phrases, the more you can actually assume that they have never practiced it or don't understand it in the end, because there's lack of evidence. And we should be actually brave enough to ask questions, right? Why do I have to use Fibonacci figures? There is no reason. I mean, I don't care too much, but maybe this is not the most important part, but you should be able to ask for evidence. Why are you doing things? Not every approach is good for every team, not for every customer. And so there is maybe no rule. Religion is a big problem. So if people are fanatic and shout at you that you need to be agile, there is probably a problem. And that's also probably not an agile approach they are actually selling either. And then there's the relabeling. And that's a hard one. Because, so I just lately came across a video of design thinking. The link is down there. And at a certain point, it shows me this picture. And I say, this is pure waterfall. What else is this? This is exactly, I don't know, 10 years before unified process. So bad, extremely bad. A bit of other words, but exactly the same. Yeah, and so and just yesterday, I came across, and I actually, so this is actually the sign of a company called Waterfall, and it's not Ukraine, it's Sweden. Yeah, and then I came across, I haven't looked at this page in a long time, but there it is. So now there is design thinking safe. But I said that it wouldn't bash safe today. Anyway, if you need a proof, there is one. So, and to quote Dave Snowden again, because I actually like the guy, the other one was actually a negative example. He says the principal market for Agile is coaching and certification, not software development. That is an indication of something coming to an end. I don't share this optimism here. But up there is But up there he has a point. So people need to go and eat their own dog food again. And just coaching Agile is not the solution. So key takeaway. Actually, it's giveaway in Agile. It's not takeaway anymore. So when I first held this speech, that was my key takeaway. So introducing better processes to become better at producing things is about producing the things, not about the process. The danger is very high that if an Agile coach comes to you, that everything you do is just follow processes. And in the end, you don't remember anymore why you introduced it anyway. But when I held this speech the first time, there were a lot of techies in the room. They all said, okay, you don't have to convince me. What would you give as an advice to programmers? So I changed the key takeaway to just do TDD. And because if you don't program correctly, and the only way of knowing if your program does the things that you want it to is test-driven, the only way that you see that you have made a mistake in the last sentence you just said, and then you undo, is test-driven. And if you don't have this kind of quality, you will never be able to estimate things because you don't know how much it takes to refactor legacy. You never know. Yeah, and I guess that's the end of it. Thanks for your attention, and I'm on time.